Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off. Because today I'm going to share a Kickstarter preview of Havoc, the combat card game from Havoc Games. And we'll let slip the dogs of war right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. As I mentioned in the open, today I am going to share a Kickstarter preview of Havoc, the combat card game. And if you followed the Gaming Gang, you know I do not do a lot of Kickstarter previews. So when I do share one, it means it's something that's really caught my eye and I want to bring to your attention. That said, I am being compensated for this video because the fine folks over at Havoc Games are advertising this Kickstarter project with thegaminggang.com for the duration of its run. It's important that you know that. Anyway, today I am going to share a Kickstarter preview of Havoc, the combat card game from Havoc Games. It is for 2 to 5 players, ages 14 and up, plays in 30 minutes to 2 hours. That's really going to depend mainly on how many players are involved as well as how familiar with the game system you happen to be. I gotta say, 2-player games the combats never went longer than 20 minutes or so, at least from my experience. Anyway, this Kickstarter project is going to launch on May 2nd. So let's swing on over to the other camera because I have set up one of the neoprene player mats that will be available with a variety of pledge levels for Havoc. So Havoc is a combat card game, thus the title combat card game, and it is one combatant versus another combatant. Now I could say mano a mano, but there are fantasy creatures and monsters that are available in the big full edition package. So it's not necessarily mano a mano. And you can have more than 2 players in a combat as well. So I already have shared a live unboxing for Havoc, and that was on my live show, The Gaming Gang Dispatch, episode 900, and I spent nearly an hour taking a look at a ton of the different cards, all the contents that are in the $99 pledge level, the Berserker level for this Kickstarter. So if you want to really get into a deep dive into a lot of the different cards and what you're going to find in the full set, by all means, I would recommend check out that video too. I will put a link in the show notes as well as include a card that you're able to click on if you want to go check out that video as well. So in this video, I am going to talk about how do you play Havoc and discuss my thoughts about the game as well. So the easiest way to get involved in Havoc with this Kickstarter project is with the $15 Shieldmate pledge level, which is going to get you one of the dual decks. And currently at the $15 level, it is the Romans. So give you a peek at some of the artwork here. I'm hoping when this Kickstarter project does launch that maybe for that $15 pledge level, they'll give you an option because there is a $35 duelist pledge level, which will get you 3 dual decks, which will be the Romans, the gladiators, as well as the knights, which I got to be honest, we didn't have an opportunity to dive on into the knights. That's why you notice this deck is still, sealed. But we looked at a bunch of other foes and combatants, which I will talk about a little bit later in this video. So as I mentioned, hopefully, maybe Havoc Games decides at the $15 pledge level, you can choose one of those 3 dual decks. There are going to be 6 dual decks in total. 3 of them historical, Romans, gladiators, and knights, and 3 of them more fantasy themed, the knight, warrior, and rogue. And I should point out, Havoc Games is in the midst of working on a tabletop role-playing game that utilizes this combat system. And they also talk about how you can utilize Havoc as a replacement for your combat system in your favorite tabletop role-playing game. I don't know if I would necessarily do that, simply because at this point, we don't have enough different combatants to utilize as far as like a fantasy role-playing game. Now, trust me, you're going to see a ton of foes, but we also know fantasy role-playing games have hundreds upon hundreds of monsters. So I don't know if I would replace my combat system, but as a 2 or more player game, there is a lot to like with Havoc. So if you're going with the full set, you're going to receive 3 booklets. We've got our quick start guide, which has everything you need to get started with the game. And I have to point out, very nicely presented. I had absolutely no issues learning how to play. There were a few times I had to go back and refer to the rules as far as what certain cards represented. I know first time we played it, we were playing the wound cards incorrectly. I'll mention that when we get into that. So we get a quick start guide. So that's all of our rules. We get a handbook, which I think is very cool because it breaks down all of the components of the game. I thought this was really, really nicely presented. And we get quite a few different combat examples for you to read through. So by the time you've gone through these books, you will easily understand all the ins and outs of Havoc. You also get a reference book, which talks about the various different cards. Now, this does not go into detail about the fantasy foes. These are all just the historic combatants. But I will point out, you got a lot of them. So kind of give you an idea. Here we have the archetypes, the historical archetypes, and we go anywhere from the early ancient period to the medieval period. Now, each of these entries here has a card, has a folk card. So we actually have a couple of Renaissance characters. We got a French duelist and an Italian duelist. But for the most part, it's ancients through the medieval period. So a lot of cool information in these books. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a combatant, and then you're also going to have a deck of cards. So each combatant, each player will have a deck of 25 cards. Their combatant is going to basically give them a rundown on what cards are in that deck. Now, there are opportunities for you to swap cards out as well as you tune your combatant the way you want to play. But to start off, you are easily going to be able to take on your opponent with the cards that are indicated to use as your deck. So here in the Romans deck, we have 4 combatants. We have the Roman Legionnaire, we have the Gallic Spearman, and then we also have the Centurion, and the Berserker. So we also have different weapons, we have different armor, we have abilities. And one of the really interesting aspects of Havoc is that each of these dual decks are going to have everything you need to play with those combatants. So you're going to have all the action cards you need, you'll have the tactics cards. Now, if you go with the full set, you are going to have additional cards that you can utilize. So if you go with the full set, you're going to be able to have more than 2 players easily. So we've got initiative cards, we've got distance cards, we have how do we figure out what the initiative is. We'll get into that in just a bit. We have cards that kind of give us breakdown on rules. So we have our to hit procedure as well as our damage procedure. We have prowess cards. So we have various levels of prowess. So the 2 combatants I'm going to share with you in this video both have a prowess of 3, so nothing changes for them. No additional damage or to hit bonus or anything like that. It's just pretty straight up what you're going to see with the cards. So let's take a look at our Legionnaire in a little more depth. So what we're looking at here is we've got his prowess, which is in the shield. That is a 3. We have how many body points he has, which is 8. That's why I've got it marked there. Now, if you don't have the mat here, if you're getting the full set, you're actually going to get cardstock mats that you can utilize, just like so. But the reality is, you don't even really need to use a mat. You're going to have these tokens, so the tokens make life a little easier if you're not using a mat. So we have body, which is the red indicator, and then in blue is fatigue. So if you run out of fatigue, then your combatant will be tired and do less damage. So we see the different weapons that we have available to the Legionnaire. We could either go with a javelin or we could go with a short sword. I have gone with a short sword. Tells us what armor is this combatant going to get. So we have scale mail, and this is sort of the body armor, and it's going to tell us based on the attack what is the penalty to the attacker, as well as what is the damage reduction. So scale mail, pretty good armor. And it also allows us the opportunity to possibly cancel out wound cards, because we have bash cards and wound cards. They're kind of like critical hit cards. We'll get into that in a little bit as well. So we also have a tower shield, which is showing what is the additional penalty to an attacker if this combatant is not attacking. If you're attacking, you do not get any benefits of a shield. So if you are pausing, and I'll talk about pause cards because your deck will have quite a few of them, then it does give you that defense. And of course, with Tower Shield showing, we also get a defense against missile attacks. We have the Corinthian Helm, which shows that we get a saving roll, 11 or higher, to cancel wounds 23 and 24. And then we have Greaves, which give us a saving roll to cancel out wounds 8 and 14. So we have a wound condition deck. We also have a bash condition deck. And based upon the weapons that are being used in your deck, you're going to have a certain type of wounds and bashes, right? So we don't have all, I think it's 24 wounds in this deck because of the weapons that are utilized in this deck. Same with the Bash Condition deck too. I thought that was very interesting. Now, of course, if you're going all in with the full set, you will have all of the Bash Condition cards and Wound Condition cards. So we also see abilities. Well, the Legionnaire doesn't have any special abilities. We do have ability cards, though, that can be utilized once per fight, once per combat round. We also have classes that we can utilize as well. So kind of cool. We can custom tailor these a little bit more. And of course, we're going to have loads more of these with the different dual decks and with the full set. So that is the armor here. What I find easiest way to show the armor is just take the full body armor, place it here, and then you can lay the shield underneath. So the other thing I do want to share with you is what are the cards that go into the deck? So I went with a short sword. So it's going to tell you what cards to utilize to make up your deck. And those are our combat action cards, which once again, you have 25 cards in your deck that you're going to utilize. You're going to shuffle them up. And most of the combatants are going to draw 7 cards to make their hand. Now, if you have a high prowess, you might actually have 8 cards. If you're not really a warrior type, say you're just like a citizen, because we do have cards for just citizens, just average folks. They only get 6 cards. So we're going to have 6 impulses in a round. And the first impulse is going to be a little different than 2 through 6. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So there we go. We got the hand here. Just show you the spearman. So spearman, as far as prowess, body, and fatigue, identical to the Legionnaire. We have a spear as a weapon, one-handed. Armor, not as much armor, and no abilities. And then it shows us, okay, here's how you're going to make up the deck. 6 thrust, 2 shield parry, 2 dodge, and 15 pause. Put that back there. I've got a deck here. Shuffle that up. I'm not actually going to draw a hand for the spearman. I'll just pull a card at random, see what we get. And then we've got the spear. And as you can see, the spear actually has 2 columns. Now the spearman can only use thrust. So the spearman's only going to use that column to the left. There are other combatants which will be able to utilize that special ability there for like a more powerful attack. But that does not come into play for the spearman. They have a medium shield and a conical helm. So they don't actually have any full body armor. So that's kind of your prep. So to start with the first impulse in each round, you're going to need to choose an action and you're going to choose a tactic card. So the tactic card is going to help us figure out who's going to have initiative. So we've got the spearman, and the spear is a longer weapon than the short sword. So the spearman is going to want to try to stay further away. Whereas the swordsman, the legionnaire, they're going to look to try to close to get closer in. Because at a long range, the spearman's going to end up with initiative. Closer range, the swordsman, the legionnaire, should have the initiative. So what we're going to do is we're going to play either close, keep distance, or stand ground. So we get to choose that now. Of course, once again, as a Legionnaire, I would definitely choose close because I'm looking to try to close the distance. And as the Spearman, you're going to look to keep distance. And of course, you're going to play these face down so your opponent doesn't see them. I'm just going to randomly take the top card as the action there. But I will take a look to see what we've got. So it looks like we've got a couple of shield parries, 3 pauses, a slash, and a thrust. So I think what we'll do to start off with is we will actually pause. So you don't take an action. But if you're attacked, you get to use your defense for your armor as well as your passive shield defense. So right there, pause shows it'd be -2. That would be if the Spearman is attacking right off the bat. And what we'll normally do is we'll put the tactic card with the action card in this spot during the first impulse. So we reveal our tactic cards, keep distance and close. So we look at keep distance. Against close, no bonus to hit for the Spearman, and we will be at long as far as our distance. Look at the same thing for close, keep distance, nothing to hit, no bonus for the Legionnaire, and then we're at long range. So long range isn't like a role-playing game long range, where it's like, oh, you can only attack with missile weapons. No, you're further away. So we actually have close. We also have contact, which in contact, just really short weapons like daggers could be utilized. So we're looking at, okay, so we're at long range. Distance is long. So we've got a distance card, which is dual-sided, 2 entries on each side. So our distance is long. All attacks and active defenses are normal. Initiative defaults to the longest weapon. Our longest weapon is the spear. So the Spearman is going to get the initiative card, right? So it's showing here longest weapon, tells us what's going on here. The initiative card goes to the Spearman. Now, distance and initiative can change during the round, but we are only going to play our tactic card once to begin the round. So we can get rid of those, and we can reveal our actions. So we know I was pausing with the Legionnaire, and let's see what we've got as far as... All right, what did I just take his card and put it away someplace? The card I drew? Whatever. All right, a thrust. There we go. So we have an attack. So the Spearman is attacking with a thrust against our pause. So what we're going to look at here is we take a look at TH. It's -1 to hit. Pause is also -2. So we're looking at a grand total of -3 right here with the armor. We also have -1 here, so we're looking at -4. So we roll 2 10-sided dice and we add them together. So we get a total from 2 to 20. And we have a red die that we keep an eye on as well, because that can lead to certain things happening with like critical hits or shields being busted and things like that. So what we're looking at here is -4 with the thrust. So you need 11 or higher as your baseline to hit. So in this case, the Spearman needs 15 or higher. Oh, so close. It was a 14, but they miss, and that will get discarded, and this will get discarded. Now we would move to the second impulse. So as the Legionnaire, I would think, well, you know what? I don't think we're going to have another attack from the Spearman. So I'm going to play a slash, which gives us a bonus to hit, but it's less of a chance of doing like a critical hit. All right, so let's just take that right off. We've got to pause and the attack. So one of the interesting things about initiative is that with the initiative, you're looking at if both combatants attack, the player with the initiative gets to attack first. If they're successful with their attack, then the defender does not get to use their attack. They have to discard their attack. Very, very interesting mechanic to this game. So initiative is very important because if you don't get initiative and you're attacking at the same time as your opponent and your opponent's hitting, you're not going to get attacks in. So let's take a look. We got a +1 to hit, -1 on our red die. That's after we have rolled this for a total. We got the medium shield, and that is it. So we don't have any body armor. So we're looking at -1. So grand total of -1 from the defensive aspects. We get a +1, so it's a straight up roll because they cancel each other out. So 11 or higher to hit. Get a 13, and that is a 10 on the red die. Now, something also interesting, and I'll show you when I play a defense card. Defense cards have a red die column, and it's the raw red die. So it's the raw roll. So this would be a 10 raw. For our damage, it's actually a 9, which is okay because we're still going to do a wound to the Spearman. So we've got the 13. So we're looking at damage of 4. Now, if the Legionnaire was tired, if he was out of fatigue points, then we would actually take the red damage and subtract it from our damage. So it would only do 3. But in this case, we do 4. And there's going to be a wound. So we're going to grab our wound condition deck. And what happens here is they're going to have to draw a wound, and they're going to have to draw a second wound, because anytime you go down to 50% of your body points, you take a wound card. Now, if that happens with a wound already being drawn, rather than having 2 wounds from 1 attack, the attacker gets to choose from 2 cards that the Spearman draws. So we've got moderate bleeding and bruised. So if we take a look at the wound card, we're going to see this little heart, broken heart. That tells us how serious is this. It goes anywhere from 1 to 3. Then we have some abbreviations usually, and it's going to tell us what attacks provide this. So if you make an attack that's not here, it doesn't happen. It's not going to happen. So this would get shuffled back in anyway, because we can't bruise the Spearman with our short sword with a thrust. Or I'm sorry, with a slash, I should say. But the moderate bleeding shows any. So they are going to take this wound. So at the beginning of the round, they're going to roll their 2 dice and they're going to take a look to see what takes place. They might lose body, they might lose fatigue, nothing might happen, or the bleeding stops and they discard this card. But for now, the spearman does have this moderate wound, the moderate bleeding. So they're going to take 4 points of damage. Now, of course, I've got this. This is for the Legionnaire. But just to give you an example, what you would do is every time you take any sort of damage, you lose 1 fatigue. You're going to take 1 fatigue as a point of damage. And then the rest is going to come off of your body. So in this case, the spearman would lose a point, and then they would lose 3 points of body. Which the reality is, now that I think about it, they wouldn't take that wound card because it's not 50%. So I forgot about the fatigue. So we'll ignore that wound card, but at least now you understand how the wound conditions work. So that would be the end of that impulse. So we discard that, discard this. And so far, our Legionnaire is ahead of the game here. So, just in case we get an attack, I am going to play a shield parry. And we'll just draw the top card. And we get a pause. So we get a pause. We get a shield parry. Nothing would happen. But, as an example, let's say that this was an attack and the attacker failed. So what would happen here is you would actually, so with this defense, we have a negative modifier to hit, so -2. Then we have distance and initiative. So if the attack failed, our distance would change to short. All attacks and active defenses are normal. Initiative defaults to the shortest weapon. So in this case, we've got the short sword. That's a shorter weapon. We would actually get the initiative, and our distance is now short. So when we would run out of impulses for this round, which, as I mentioned before, we have 6, if our initiative doesn't change and our distance doesn't change, our distance to start the next round is going to be short. We'll play our tactic cards and see if that changes. So, wanted to share that. So those get discarded. And why not? Let's try a thrust. And we'll just take this at random. Ooh, so we got a thrust. And we got a thrust. Now, the initiative is still the spearman, because there wasn't an attack. I was just sharing how these defense cards work, giving you an example. So here we've got a thrust. It's going to be -1 to hit. And then we have -1 to hit. So that's -2. So it's going to be -2 to hit for the spearman. So we're actually looking at a 13 or higher. Oh, just missed. Just missed. So now we would get an opportunity to attack. Now, something I should have mentioned while we were taking a look at that shield parry, we also have the raw red die. So we could have, with the shield parry, the attacker get bashed. So the attacker has to take a bash condition card on a 1 to 3. And on a 10, the shield would get discarded. So the Legionnaire would lose their shield. So we would actually discard the shield card if that were to take place in the attack. All right, so the Spearman missed, so we get the Legionnaire who gets to attack. So the Legionnaire's got -1 to hit and nothing else because the Spearman does not have any body armor. So we need a 12 or higher. No. So both miss, both get discarded. On to the next. We'll just do a pause. Flip that, 2 pauses. Discard that, and then we would have our final impulse. So this is the 6th impulse. Yeah, might as well use that. Now, if you've got any extra cards, they get discarded. If you want, you can just put it on the bottom. All right, so we've got a pause, and we've got a shield parry, so nothing would happen. And then we would move to our second round. So here's where we would play our tactic card again, and we would play an action card. Now we're going to go through our entire deck before we reshuffle. I got to be honest, most of the times when we've played, and we've played this quite a bit with quite a few different combatants, I got to be very honest, I think we had to reshuffle. I could count on one hand how many times we actually reshuffled, because this plays pretty quick. Now, once again, keep in mind, I'm talking about the 2 players. So that in a 2-player game, we have not played with more than 2 players. So that, in essence, is how you play. So what you're going to do is you're going to wait till one of your combatants is down to 0 or fewer body points. Now, at 0 body points, they're out of action. At negative 50% of their body points, they are dead. So most of the time in a combat, if somebody's reduced to 0, you figure their opponent's going to apply the coup de grace anyway. But it does allow you the opportunity for kind of advancement with your combatants as well. So something else to keep in mind, because remember, we've got different levels of prowess. We've got different abilities. So there's a lot going on with this outside of just what I'm showing you from the single dual deck for the Romans. So to give you an idea of what you're looking at with the full set, we've got, and of course, obviously enough, I've taken some decks out of the box here. But as you can see, we've got combatants, we've got defense cards, advanced attacks, got melee cards, more bash cards. So as you can see, this tuck box, it's got a lot of bash and wound cards in it. More weapons, advanced defenses, more pause cards. Like I said, each of these dual decks provides you with enough cards for 2 players. This full set gives you loads of cards. And then we got more attacks. Something else I wanted to show you. Are some of the faux cards. So these are all various different combatants that you would essentially be using to replace the Legionnaire and the Spearman. Look at all of these. These are all combatants. So we've got historical fighters, and we also have fantasy creatures. So a Minotaur, a White, Hobgoblin Archer, a Norman Knight. And as you can see, we get everything broken down. So, okay, prowess 4, 10 body, 5 fatigue, uses a war axe, chainmail. I mean, this is wild. And then we got abilities too. I thought this was super, super cool. A great spider. Goblin minion. Celtic chieftain. So this is, in my opinion, this is one of the biggest selling points for Havoc. Now, Havoc Games are in the midst of creating their own tabletop role-playing game. So that would lead me to believe that you are going to see more and more of these various different foes. Germanic Crusader, a Lesser Drake, it's a dragon. The Greater Dragon actually has a name, but the Greater Dragon has a body of 80. So keep in mind, that would certainly be more than 2 players, as one player would take on the role of the dragon. The other players would be the attackers of the dragon. So there you have pretty much how you play Havoc. So let's swing on over to the other camera. I'm going to share some final thoughts as well as what I really recommend doing with the various different pledge levels that are out there. So at $15, you can get one of the dual decks. Currently, it's Romans. I really do hope that Havoc Games gives backers a choice, because we've got Romans, we've got gladiators, and we also have knights. Those are historical. Then for fantasy, we've got knights, warriors, and rogues. One thing that we really don't have in Havoc is magic. We don't have magic users. I bet you that's something on the horizon, though, especially since this is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game being worked on by Havoc Games. So we've got a variety of different pledge levels out there. Now, as far as Kickstarter previews go, I do not give a review score, because as close to this being the actual retail edition that will be available to buyers, it's not it. So I highly doubt much of anything changes, but because this is not a retail edition of a game, I do not give a review score. Having said that, I really like Havoc a lot, and so does my nephew Cameron, so does my best friend Elliot Miller. We have all played this, not all 3 of us together, as I mentioned. I've only played it 2 players, but this is a lot of fun, and there are a lot of different options as well as how you can play it. So as I was showing, we were playing each impulse. Okay, each of the players plays a card. You can even do it where you're stacking the entire round. So that's kind of wild too. It's almost like, you know, programmed actions that you have to sit there. Okay. Personally, I have tried that way, stacking the actions. I like just each impulse playing a card from your hand. To me, it's a little more strategic that way. But some people out there will like the whole programmed action approach as well. Really, really cool. If you want to just get on board and check it out, you can always just pledge for a dual deck. You can pledge $35 and get the 3 historical dual decks. That's the duelist pledge level. $60 gets you the adventurer pledge level, which is all 6 of the dual decks. You can get the full game itself without the play mats, without the dual decks, at $75. And for $90, you get the full set plus 1 mat. And for the Berserker, you get the full set and both of the play mats. And a demo version of Havoc, which you can play on Tabletop Simulator. And then finally, we have the 145 Warlord, which is pretty much all in. You get everything. So you get the full set, you get the play mats, and you also get those 6 dual decks, which you can give away to friends if you want. I mean, that gives you the opportunity for a lot of play. As far as all the cards that are in the main set, you'll easily be able to get 5, maybe even 6 people playing all at once with that full set. And of course, remember, you've got all those foes available to you as well. So yes, I really do like Havoc, the combat card game, quite a lot. And if you are interested in any sort of one-on-one or small kind of skirmish level combat games, you really should take a hard look at the Havoc Kickstarter. Once again, launching on May 2nd. That's it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ding that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this preview, it'll also inform you when my live stream, The Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs currently Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you will not find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for taking time out to take a peek at this preview. And until I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.
Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, that's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.